For weeks, rumors swirled behind the palace gates. What state was Prince Louis in? Why did the youngest royal suddenly vanish from view? But just 3 minutes ago, King Charles broke the silence with a shocking, melancholy statement that is making waves around the world. It's not merely a terrible reality. It exposes a deeper royal problem than anyone had thought. Before we get further into what this truly means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any updates. It started out too quietly. Royal calendars were updated for no apparent reason. Public appearances went on without the identifiable light of a young prince's smile. At first, palace officials dismissed it as commonplace. Even though they said the child was napping, it was difficult to overlook the absence as the days turned into weeks. Everyone knew something wasn't right. Social media reacted negatively to the palace's unwillingness to challenge the calm. Every hazy photo, every cancelled engagement, and every unanswered inquiry encouraged darker thoughts. Was it a medical condition, a secret accident, or something the monarchy was desperately trying to hide? The longer the palace was silent, the louder the whispers became. Then came the time no one was prepared for. King Charles seemed to be carrying a lot of weight rather than proceeding confidently. He spoke slowly, deliberately, and emotionally, saying, this was not the polished voice of a monarch delivering rehearsed reassurance. This grandfather was experiencing speech difficulties. This is not just about a young boy, he said, his voice trailing off. It's about everything we've failed to protect. That one comment was crucial because it made it clear right away that this was more than a minor setback or a passing concern. Charles wasn't discussing schedules or privacy. He was talking about regret, culpability, and a reality that had been ignored for too long. The air was stifling, according to people close to the palace. Senior assistants reportedly lowered their gazes during the statement, fully aware that this silence had not occurred by accident. It had been carefully measured, planned, and then painstakingly exposed. Private inquiries had been made long before the public learned about Louis's absence. In order to maintain normalcy, early warnings, subtle clues, and concerns were minimized, delayed, or disregarded. As the crown moved forward, something fragile was left behind. The characters played by William and Catherine have also received a lot of notice. Why are we waiting this long? Why endure the stress, the gossip, and the painful speculation? Insiders say the choice to keep quiet was not made in a hurry. Fear drove the decision, fear of being found out, fear of the consequences, and dread of what would occur if the truth were to be revealed. And the appearance of calm has disappeared now that Charles has finally spoken. The palace no longer controls the narrative. The truth is pushing outward and yelling to be heard. But when the king's voice cracks, the real narrative begins to unravel. Because there are other problems here besides illness, traitors lurk beneath the palace's marble. Before anyone else did, the palace staff became aware that something was wrong. Late-night doctors' appointments, heated arguments in Kensington's East Wing, and a nursery that grew progressively quieter. We now understand why Prince Louis's early years were already beset by unsettling whispers. Even in a house accustomed to concealment, there was something different about the energy in Louis' wing. Workers who had before mocked the charisma of the youngest royals now had to exercise caution. Aides glanced at one another, maids paused longer by his door, and footmen often returned from that corridor appearing reticent and pale. It was not a traditional form of illness. There was fear and anxiety about what would be discovered. Catherine had already begun covertly hiring physicians and other experts who weren't formally employed by the royal family, even as the public saw joyful family photos taken behind closed doors. They were more than simple medical exams. These were thorough developmental evaluations that were conducted in total secrecy, out of the gaze of traditional advisors and away from palace clinics. Catherine, who was usually so composed, was obviously exhausted. She split her days between royal duties and emotionally draining appointments with pediatric neurologists. She refused to inform the media because she feared miscommunications rather than humiliation. The crucial moment happened in the middle of an afternoon gaming session. One of the workers rushed to Catherine, gasping, to tell her that Louis had unexpectedly fainted. The sudden quiet, which had no visible cause and no visible wounds or bruises, stunned everyone in the room. The fear that followed came at once. A medical team arrived and resuscitated Louis. But something had clearly changed at that very moment. Catherine, shaken to her core, called William. The two avoided public life for the following 2 weeks after departing a state function in less than an hour. Not every member of the family knew, though. Grandfather Charles participated extensively in diplomatic briefings and public appearances, but he was kept in the dark about Catherine's decision. Not cruelty, but protection. She needed time. However, Camilla was enraged. After Catherine gave her evasive answers to her repeated inquiries about Louis' whereabouts, she allegedly accused her of being unduly emotional. This conflict further worsened an already difficult family dynamic. Meanwhile, palace officials activated what is colloquially known as the Royal Privacy Clause, a seldom employed process that forbids media outlets from reporting on specific health-related inquiries of famous youngsters or the elderly. Any leaks would be met with aggressive legal action. The sudden execution of this clause, which had been dormant for over 2 decades, made a powerful signal. The business didn't want the general public to be aware of the problem. But that only made them more suspicious. The longer the palace was still, the louder the voices were outside. A series of violent altercations occur within the castle as royal medics look for answers. When King Charles tried to unite the family at a trying period, Camilla had different ideas. What began as concerns swiftly turned into animosity because Catherine could not tolerate Camilla's growing influence, distorting the truth about Prince Louis's condition. At first, Camilla's involvement seemed to be driven by pure motives. She inquired how Louis was doing, expressed her sympathy, and even proposed a small family gathering to support William and Catherine. But behind the scenes, her tone quickly shifted. Camilla dismissed the growing health concerns as media hysteria and said that the press was making money off of panic and silence during a private luncheon with top aides. Her exact words, "This is just another overblown royal flu," were made public a few days later, startling the entire palace. Catherine, already emotionally depleted, felt so betrayed. It only got worse from there. After Louis was excused due to a health issue, Camilla reportedly invited a few members of the press to an important royal charity event. In any event, additional cameras were allowed access, coverage expanded, and Camilla took center stage with her grandchildren, who were waving, smiling, and talking about the bright future of the monarchy. For Catherine, this was the final straw. In addition to being thoughtless, she perceived it as a premeditated attempt to draw attention away from Louis and toward Camilla's own family background. Behind closed doors, the tension turned into a rare and intense brawl. Princess Anne, who was very worried by the drama unfolding and strongly loyal to Catherine, privately challenged Camilla. What began as a scathing conversation quickly heated up. Camilla reportedly said that no one was backing the monarchy in response to Anne's charge that she was enhancing her public image by employing a sick child. It got cold in the room. Those comments would echo around the palace corridors for days. Charles, torn between loyalty and leadership, attempted to mediate, but Camille would not budge. She insisted that the family was becoming divided and afraid as a result of Catherine's unchecked power over media narratives. She urged Charles to impose further limitations on what may be shared with the public and suggested that Catherine take over as the crucial media liaison. Charles hesitated, but the damage was already done. In the background, Camilla had also begun to push for more attention for her grandchildren. A series of press announcements quietly shifted the royal emphasis to the Parker Bowl family. Features were written, pictures were uploaded, and even educational activities were organized to raise their profile. It was intentional, purposeful, and completely unrelated to the emotional burden Catherine and William were carrying. William's turning point came at a late-night strategy meeting with senior advisors. In a fit of distress and fury, he turned to his father and described Camilla's actions as nothing less than callous contempt. He accused her of exploiting the royal position to rewrite legacy lines. It wasn't cooked. It was personal. It was also a watershed in the relationship between Charles's present bride and his future king. But more than just Camille's dishonesty soon tore the family apart. Then, out of the blue, another royal would do something disastrous. During Prince Louis's silent suffering, Prince Harry decided to divulge the one secret that Catherine was afraid would ever be discovered. In a rare interview, he discussed more than just family strife. When he named identities, King Charles was taken aback by his words. The timing alone looks awful. When the palace attempted to manage the mounting concern about Louis, Harry's words, which were exact and very personal, detonated like a controlled explosion. He spoke methodically and slowly, as if he had spent years honing each sentence. This was no impulsive fit of wrath. It was calculated truth, at least in his opinion. Harry suggested that Prince Louis's fate had been predetermined from the start, not by accident, but rather by the internal mechanisms of the monarchy. He talked about fashions, traditions that value appearances over deeds, and cautions ignored since doing so would mean confronting uncomfortable truths about the royal family. His conclusion was awful. This was no accident. It was neglect covered by procedure. Then the line froze the country. Harry claimed that King Charles had been made aware of a hereditary issue affecting particular family branches years before. A possibility, a danger, something that was privately discussed before being postponed. According to Harry, the crown put continuity ahead of prudence and prestige ahead of accountability. Charles was aware, he claimed, and chose to remain silent. Meghan didn't hold her tongue for long. She promptly repeated Harry's accusations, claiming that the business concealed sensitive genetic analyses to preserve public order. Instead of portraying it as a royal failing, she framed it as an institutional one. They protect the throne, she said, even at the cost of a child. The words immediately became popular, evoking a mixture of disbelief and outrage. The tension of everything in the palace caused Catherine to faint. The interview played once, then again. More was revealed with each repetition. Someone she had previously trusted had taken her by surprise, exposed her, and tricked her. This was not a problem. This was a form of public warfare. Catherine reportedly wept in private. Both the timing and the accusations fueled her rage. Louis was still vulnerable and frail, and the world was now aware of his misery. The monarchy is now on the verge of its most precarious moment in decades, as the fallout from charges, interviews, and a king's shaky confession is being worked out. Prince Louis's health is no longer the only issue here. It has to do with trust, about the ability of the tradition-based organization to endure openness. A woman battled to keep her son safe. The very structure he was born to inherit was questioned by a parent. A king expressed regret, and on the other side of the world, a prince started a fire that might never go out. If even a small portion of Harry's assertions are true, the harm goes well beyond the royal walls. However, the damage caused by such comments could be equally as severe if they don't. In any case, the crown's own silence is causing the unifying image it has worked so hard to maintain to crumble. Although Prince Louis is no longer visible, the conflict surrounding his narrative is now widely known. Furthermore, the future of the royal family itself may be completely